Hey there, Frank.
Hey, Tom, how you doing?
Not bad. Not bad at all. Welcome
And
to another session of something to say, I guess, huh?
you betcha.
Oh, gosh. Just a quick update on uh, the music. I often bring this up, the Indiana Music History Project.
Oh, how
So,
how many minutes do you want to do in this, Tom?
I think we'd agreed 30 minutes would be good, so
Okay.
we don't take up a lot of time
All
and
right.
kind of know what people know what to expect. We know what to expect. So
Okay. So the Music History Project.
yeah, it's he's a continued. There's now a I may have mentioned this last time. I'm not for sure. There's a display from all this. Well, it actually started a couple weeks ago by now. Time just keeps on slipping into the future. So there's three display cases at the Central Library currently, and then there's some other things going on. I can't remember. So Rick asked me and David if we could help out with. I think it's I'd have to look. It's something where they have like these tables where they meet people, but I don't have that information in front of me, and I couldn't do it because I got another appointment right smack in the middle of the day that he's got in mind. So but David Slates is going to do it, but it's a tabling event, and it might. Well, I shouldn't say. I was thinking maybe it was at the oh, what's that called? That goes over. It's the uh, you run under it as you go down up Delaware, for instance. I think. But anyway, I'd have to look. That was I didn't. It doesn't stick in my mind because it turned out I couldn't do it. But I do know that the Central Library, he's got three display cases going on. So if you happen to Central Library, that that's going on right now.
Excellent.
So yeah, he keeps working at it. David and I keep going down to the gallery most Tuesdays and working on the inventory. Um, so more to be done, and we've got volunteers to do, but you got to start somewhere, and we're always trying to get people to join up and you know
You
help
know
us
that
along.
that project is so big. I
Yeah,
cannot imagine having enough volunteers to really
yeah,
do
it's one
everything.
of those. It is. It's kind of a situation where we've got. So David, we got a platoon. He said, Tom. He said, platoon is more than two, but he's got. I don't know. I know what David and I are doing, and there also are people. Various people are doing various things. I don't know most of them. It would be good to have another meeting where we kind of all get together so we can see each other, but he hasn't set that up. But it takes time.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I see the results of a lot of what these some of these other volunteers are doing, especially the display case people. There have been some people that have together a really nice, put together a very nice uh, gallery setup. They went in there. There's an amazing setup in there. So if you have a chance to get down there, uh, that would be good.
Tom,
Give, give, give you an idea of what's going on.
would you like to give an idea, just a quick snapshot of what the Music History Project is and how to contact the Rick Wilkerson, the director?
Well, I'm looking right now at a poster over there. Rick is available. It was done by Wayne Birch,
Oh
and
yeah.
uh, and he isn't a volunteer, but Rick said we'll probably be employing his services again. that it says, I'm going to just walk over here. I like the words that are on this poster. Now,
Okay. Can't hear a word you're saying, Tom.
educate, preserve, and there's some other things.
I,
Promote.
I can't hear when you walk away from the mic.
Yeah, it's too. Yeah, this microphone is not that good. Um, so it's really, when you think about it, so it covers the whole state of Indiana, all genres of music from the beginning, whenever that is identified, to now. So it's a really over the top goal that they've
Yeah,
got.
yeah.
But it's it's he started it in 2000. The poster says 2015, but I think he told me originally 2014, but maybe it was 2015. The the pandemic almost did it in,
Yeah.
almost, but not quite. And the subsequently we've picked up more momentum. And so,
What are some of the jobs that volunteers do there?
well, like just um, one of the folks that may be an actual employee, but I don't want to misspeak here. He is they got a grant and got a listening booth, and so that's being loaded by one of them. So he's in there. David and I see him on Tuesdays with him right now, but he's in there, I think maybe almost every day for a few hours, and he is loading, I think, tapes and CDs. He's loading that kiosk, I'm going to call it. Actually, it's a kiosk that they got with some grant money. David and I are doing what's called inventorying or sessioning materials that come in. So that gets done ahead of a person who is cataloging it on a program called cataloging. I may get back to that one day. I don't know. Then, of course, as I just mentioned recently, today, a few minutes ago, there are people who are doing the uh, displays. That's a lot of work. It takes a person with a particular eye
Yeah.
to do that. Rick does some of it, uh, but there was a great big display a few months ago down at the Indiana State Library, and somebody did a remarkable job with that. I guess there's also one that was at the Kurt Vonnegut Library. I didn't get to see that.
Now, How do
So,
they contact if anybody has any interest in volunteering? How do they contact
well,
you? What's the number for Rick?
if you Google Indiana Music History Project, it will come up.
Okay.
You'll see a link to their, their website, and you can take it from there.
Okay.
And
Okay. Well, let's move on to Tom Probasco and something to say.
well, I have got to thinking about a couple of things. Back in, let's see, from the mid 80s to, not, well, until I left to go to library school in 1989, I worked at the, what was then called the Landmark Building. And well, I think it still says the Landmark Building. So I was um, a file clerk, basically, working in with paper files and microfilm. Back in those days, that's how things were done. And when I started in '79, um, it was called Indiana. Subsequently, after divestiture of AT&T, the time I left, it was uh, Meritech.
Uh,
But in any case, it was so in those years that I worked there, almost 11 years. I get well, it was half that time was spent at the Landmark building. I used to walk down that building set between Pennsylvania and Meridian. And in those days, when I would walk down there, there was this old, well, there was newer ones built, but originally the ones that I wound up writing about in this poem that I read, um, they were monuments to various things. War, Indiana, there was the Indiana War Memorial, but there were several others. And one year, mid 80s, they decided they needed cleaned up. So they were sandblasted. And I got to seeing that and got to thinking about it and saw, and something that happened, I could hear them um, occurred. So I will read it in that is way of background to this one. Is called On High. And this is it. On high. Workers on scaffolds high shout down some passers-by indistinct obscenity. Their position, superior as they see it, makes them feel secure, knocking the dirt off old monuments is their task. Their risk and contribution we think we know, though some insist only time will tell. Our fear is of the heights at which they work. The danger is in thinking too much or too little about it, and in thinking we can distinguish us from them with ease. But that was one that occurred to me. I think it was probably, yeah, it must have been in the mid 80s.
mm-hmm.
At the same time that I worked in that building, I would be in there. That also was on lunch hour, I guess it was. So I'd be over uh, looking out, eating my lunch typically. So, but sometimes, because that building, we were on the 10th floor. There was only one floor that was higher. And at one point, this came to me, uh, and I entitled it "Longing." I wish that I could soar like a bird over this city, or rather more like a spirit that needs no love or warmth, but still can feel and give those things where opportunity for. I wish that I could fly like that instead of going door to door through the cold cheerless spaces that can kill human beings. That was another thing that occurred to me when I worked in that building all those years ago. I'm actually looking at it here, right next page after longing. This is another thing. As I was preparing to leave and go down to Bloomington to school, I knew another man who was already taking night classes, as they were often called then. So this occurred, in fact, I called it lunch hour. Walking back towards work, an acquaintance approaches, one I've known for several years. We meet and greet, and he briefly inquires about an endeavor I began some time ago, and will take me that again and longer to finish. Then a few steps later, I realized he did not have to mean it very much. Just in making his good luck at that moment sound sincere, he did a good deed. Uh, this man's name was Mitch, and he did mean it sincerely, but that was just the case that it was a thing we often talked about. He was going to school and he knew what it meant, you know, to have to go to school and work. Now, at the time that I knew Mitch, it was I had done some night classes with at IUPUI in the city, and I think you had done some of those, but certainly Mitch had. I was working toward getting undergrad finished so that I could go to graduate school at uh, at in Bloomington. So I was chipping away at going to these night classes, and that's what Mitch was doing. And I know that you, Frank, had done some of the same there.
Yeah.
Um, so that was one of those things that you know uh, a lot of us have done. Um, but Mitch was very encouraging, as you have to me regarding other. But I know you, I think I know you both. You and actually you and Barbara both attended school in different situations.
Yes.
And Mitch for sure was one that was doing that.
When did you start writing poetry, Tom?
Wow. You know, I I can't recall. I was it was years ago. If I look in this big ring binder that I've got, um, I was probably at it many years ago. Uh, Probably some of those go back to the 70s. I don't, I would say that that's when I look at some of these chat books that you encouraged me to write. As I look, there aren't dates in these, and you just don't typically do that. See, um, well, I look at this cover on the number, the first one that
Right.
I'm working my way through now, just in these sessions here. Some of those go back to the uh, probably 72, 73. In fact, some of those that I've read, I was made my first foray into Indiana. I think one of those that I read about sitting on the dock, looking out across, this was early morning. That would have been, man, that would have been 72 because I came to Indiana to wash dishes at the camp, Camp Riley in Bradford Woods.
Relatively few people have come to Indiana to wash dishes.
Well, that's what I did. It's a kind of a funny story. I grew up in the Xenia Friends Church, um, Xenia, obviously, and then I was approached. A friend of mine and I, Rob Knight, were approached by a man who was usually he was the associate director. So a guy named Bob Wade from Martinsville, Indiana, was a camp director. But Bob, this man, um, uh, he uh, approached. He attended Xenia Friends Church, and he approached Rob Knight and I and said, "Hey guys, we need some. You want a summer job?" Which we did, and he said, "Well," he explained, about this camp, and they needed dishwashers. So off we went, man. It was quite an experience. We worked for 6 weeks. We worked for the Riley Memorial Association for Camp Riley, and then there was another camp that we stayed around for that was uh, for. I'm not going to think of it right now, but it was 2 weeks, and it was specifically. I cannot think, and it'll come to me later. But we went mainly initially for the back in those days it was called the Handicapped Children's Camp uh, there Bradford was, and that's what we did for the first 2 years. I eventually became a counselor. I think one year I even drove the bus. Um, so I did a couple other things like that. So, but that's what how I got here by and
Kind,
by.
kind of, kind of accidentally.
Life often does. It just seems like that.
It does.
Didn't
It
didn't
does.
didn't plan anything. That was that. I think it's uh, Sister Mary Kay at the library said this to me one time. She said, "If you want to make God laugh, tell her your plans." But I think maybe you probably know better than I think that actually came from a Beatles song. If you want to make God laugh, sometimes it's stated that way. Tell him your plans. I had I think maybe I could look that up, but I kind of think that is the case.
Well, if you run across it, send me a link.
Yeah, but that was a woman that was at the library, Sister Mary Kay, and she said, "Yeah, yeah, want to make," and she used God as a spoke of God as a female gender. Want to make
Yes,
God? You want to make God laugh? Tell her your plans, and then
I think
that's
that's fair.
yeah. I mean, I just it does. That's just think about your own life, and it's whatever plans you may have had or hadn't. Um, uh, uh, I think I already read one from here. Was I was at that uh, Yeah, I think I already read this one. Something Imagined. Yeah, about the sitting there on that lake early one morning, the lake that was associated with this camp. So that was 1972. And I think that was early years that I was kind of getting I had done some writing before that, but that's the ones that I had kept and got included in this. Um, I was kind of jumping around here, but trying to see. Um, there was another one that had to do, and you read it, when you were doing the front porch during the pandemic.
Yes.
It was called Name, but I don't know that it's necessarily in this one, or I'd read it because it was related to the names that were uh, carved on the outside of the central library. And I don't know if it's in here. I'm going to just take a look here. I'll probably have to come back to that at some point. Um, but the ones in this um, volume are from really many years ago. Um, Separate thing, but I think there was one session of this, Frank. I think you said didn't get saved, so maybe I could even pick up from there. Um,
It's okay to repeat yourself.
I
Uh,
guess it is. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I guess that's true.
but we're,
Um,
you know what, we're running a little close on time here. We're
okay.
a little over 3 minutes.
Oop,
I've got
okay.
a,
All
I've
right.
got a, I've got a burning question here.
Yeah, a burning question. All right. What is it?
I love your little, you know, slices of life that, you know, and I like poetry for its ability to to capture that. It's like street photography or it could be much more extensive, but the shorter ones that just capture a moment and
Yeah,
time and
yeah,
place.
yeah.
How do you know that something needs to be written as a poem? How does it come to you? Uh,
And some, and I've heard others say this, that they don't necessarily know. Sometimes they say some arrive just sort of unbidden, almost already fully formed. I've heard others say that.
but what's
Uh,
the difference? What's the difference between writing and not writing? At what point do you know that you're going to write something down?
yeah, well, that's a good question. You go through your day and there's so much that happens. You might even think, I think I would wonder if that could be a poem, but I keep moving and it doesn't. Then other times, I've even had this happen. I'll get up in the night and write, something occurs to me. I think or I'll just be getting ready to go to bed, and I have a thought, and I think I'm going to go out there and I write down a line. It just sort of shows up, and I write it down, and maybe it'll be three or four lines, and I'll just see, will that persist as a poem? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And other times it'll take a lot of chiseling. I think I said to you one time, it's like carving a statue. You got this block, and you want to just get rid of as much as possible and see what remains, because that's the essence. How little can you say without and still get something across
But,
without being too verbose? I guess
but it
that's
just kind of appears out of nowhere.
in some ways I think that's true. People talk about a muse. I don't know what the muse, I don't necessarily know what that is, but something, sometimes it's even a memory, in the present time. And it doesn't, you won't, it doesn't let go of you. And so you try to make something out of it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Some would say even what you offer up, it doesn't necessarily work. But as William Sta- as William Stafford said, when somebody was complaining about something, he said, "Look, he said it's just a poem."
I
That was
love it.
something that William Stafford said, and I said,
I'm fascinated by the creative process, not just the end result, but how do we get to that?
"Yeah,
And we are out of time for today.
all right, we'll pick it up from there."
It's been beautiful, and we'll have to keep working on on getting me on a new schedule here. My life is different here, and
Oh, I,
and
I
uh,
understand. I
so
understand.
but it's so worth the effort to me, and I appreciate your patience with me.
Well, I
For those who
appreciate
don't know what
your
I'm talking about, I'm kind of known among my video friends for not showing up at times.
well, hey, it happens to all of us, but I appreciate your persistence.
Well, it's definitely worth persisting, and Tom, thank you so much.
Well, thank
Something
you,
to
Frank.
say, something
All
to
right.
say with
See
Tom.
you next time.
All right, Tom. Bye bye.
Bye for now.